Hi, everyone. We're just going to allow a minute or so for people to join in. For those of you who are interested or whoever won't be able to make it, will have a recording sent out as well as the presentation after the webinar itself. Yeah, so maybe we can start. Niklas, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot for your invite. Thank you.
Yeah, so again, hi everyone. I'm Maria from Productive. Thanks for joining. Today we have a special guest, as you can see. He's the host for today. He'll be taking the stage. Niklas Dorn is the CEO and co-founder of Filestage, and he's here to share his insights on creating a robust review process for AI-generated content. Again, thanks for joining. And just before we get started with his findings from his report and Filestage itself, let me just give you a quick background on Productive for those of you who haven't heard about it or don't yet use it. Yeah, so Productive is an end-to-end agency management platform, and by end-to-end we mean that agency businesses can run all their operations in Productive. So from sales, budgeting, project management, resource planning, time tracking, of course, reporting, and billing. Both Productive and Filestage have quite similar audiences, creative agencies, creative teams, marketing teams. So now it's your turn, Niklas. Basically, can you give us a background on Filestage, and then please dive straight into your findings.
Of course. Yes. Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for having me, and for everybody joining today. Thanks a lot for visiting. Yeah, and maybe a heads up before we dive into it. If you have any questions or something, feel free to really ask your questions on the fly, interrupt. I'm happy to have a more interactive session than just me talking in a monologue for half an hour or something. So just that in a nutshell. I'm CEO and co-founder of Filestage. Started this company around about 9 years ago. And over time, me and my co-founder and me, we have worked with really like hundreds of agencies and brands to really help them, yeah, become more effective when it comes to review and approval. So my co-founder originally comes from the video content creation industry, has produced lots of content for clients, and I'm coming from the marketing side. In a nutshell, Filestage is a content review and approval collaboration software for creative teams. I think to make it a bit clearer before I dive into the masterclass, what we're doing and what the expertise is, I want to show you one specific problem that I guess all of you have faced if you are working for an agency, if you work in content creation. The moment you create a beautiful piece of new content, you finished a great campaign for a client, a great new video or something in this direction, and you're super excited to share it, and just want to get the word out of it and get feedback from your client. Typically, that's the biggest downer, because then you start to share it via email, you start to start kind of an email ping pong, or you end up in endless Zoom meeting conferences to just discuss the content. And at the end, it feels a bit like a big nightmare where you're just lost in translation. And this is exactly where we are sitting with Filestage, and this is also what frustrated us a lot before Filestage, that it feels like always so complicated to get feedback and just streamline this part. So this is why we created the solution Filestage. And there you can just share, review any kind of content. It can be a video, it can be a PDF, it can be an entire website. And then it allows you to give simple feedback like you know it from Adobe Acrobat. You can just click within the video and leave feedback. You can discuss it with your client and everybody can just follow the process. So ideally that at the end you have a very smooth process where you don't end up with 99.9 final versions of your content. So that's in a nutshell about us. But now about this webinar and the masterclass, what am I going to touch today? On the one side, first of all, I'm gonna start by sharing with you some insights from our AI report that were, at least to me, like quite surprising at the beginning, in terms of how are people already using AI and how transparent they are about sharing that they're using AI. For example, this is something we can have a closer look. Then from there, we're gonna touch about one issue I think that everybody's facing right now. So AI is an instrument to make you more productive and really increase the productivity of your agency and yourself. But at the same time, there's also risk that it puts quality, that it produces lower quality. And I think this is something that is handleable. And this brings us to the last point, basically. I will try to really give you practical tips how to set up a robust review process and how to really be on top of the quality of all the content you're going to produce, right? So let's start with the first step. And let's check how marketers and creatives today use already AI. The remarkable thing to me is, and this is a stat from January, that over 40% were already using AI daily or weekly to create marketing content, right? Of course, no surprise, startups and freelancers at the forefront, but also agencies are using it quite heavily and even brands. So I think that's quite interesting. At the same time, keep in mind that this is from January. If you would ask the same question today, I'm pretty convinced that we would be at around 60 or 70% easy. So yeah, AI has really started to be used. But then at the same time, and that was the surprising thing for me, is that over 60% have not shared this with their managers or even their clients. So basically, this means like people are using AI and really think it helps them. They're using it to produce content, but at the same time, they're not transparent about it. So they keep it as a secret. And I think this comes with a downside, but this also comes with an opportunity when you think about it. So maybe that's also a potential question to everybody here. Um, if you like, feel free to post into the chat. Do you use AI already to create content today? That would be my first question. Feel free to share it. Yeah, so what does it really mean? And I think we can have a look at the next question. So if people basically use AI so much, and I think we have to face that it's not a trend that is just there for a day or so. I feel like this is a major shift like we have seen at the beginning of the internet. So AI, I think, will really change the way we work and it will stay. That's on the one side. But then on the other side, people are not transparent about it. So the question is, what does it really mean for your productivity then? That's the other interesting fact that we have seen. Over 80% say AI will have a positive impact on their productivity. And I think, again, people are tremendously positive about it and expect a lot from it. And even more interesting it becomes when you look at this number and take some context or add some context to this. So I talk a lot to agency owners. I talk a lot to CMOs of big brands because we have those customers. And what I learned, and maybe you can agree, 23 and also 24 was not an easy year for most of the agencies out there because the majority of the big brands is really like reducing budgets or freezing budgets and basically is looking to become more productive and get more out of it. And suddenly there is this new technology, AI, where everybody feels like, oh wow, this is something I can really use to become more productive and produce even more with less. And I think this is what why people also say they feel like it will help with profitability. Um, but yeah, I think this is really something to keep in mind, and we go back to this later in the presentation one more time. Okay, next one. This is also something I found very interesting. The majority is expecting AI to help them to build a skill set or help them with tasks that are not part of their core day-to-day doing, not part of their core skill set. So they don't expect their own work, day-to-day work, to become improved or something. No, they expect a bit like other tasks around them. To give you an example, what could this be? This could be something like we are doing already. Let's say you produce content and you need to localize this content. It's pretty likely that you are already using a translation tool, that you use ChatGPT or Mistral or something else to translate your content into different languages. And this is normally not a core thing, a core skill set that you are able to translate it into French and Korean and whatsoever. And this is something that is likely to be replaced. Also, another example would be a social media manager, that instead of asking a designer to design all the social media content for them, potentially they're just using a new tool like Canva and the AI capabilities to come up with, let's say, their own graphic designs. So they suddenly start to become their own producer. Um, and before, maybe that was not part of their skill set. Before they said, I'm not really good at design, I cannot do it, I need help. And those are just two examples I definitely see in my own day-to-day work that have changed already. Yes. Um, so that's something to keep in mind as well, I think, moving forward. And then here. And now this is the interesting twist. So if suddenly people like you and me, let's say I'm not a designer, I'm not a video producer, I'm not a translator, suddenly I use those tools to design, to create a video, to translate, I become more and more a content producer myself. And this is something that just does, it's not just happening for me, it's happening for everybody in an organization. This is happening in your agency, but this is also happening at the client side. So suddenly you have more and more people producing content, and content is produced here, 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 here in different places. At the same time, you still want to make sure all the content that goes out, if you manage a brand professionally, is on brand. You want to make sure it's compliant. You really want to make sure you're not taking any risks because you're using AI content suddenly. You want to become more productive and not, let's say, more vulnerable um, to the outside world. And I think this is also why the majority of the people that participated in this report said it's pretty likely that you have to review more and more content nowadays, not less. Yeah? Um, Now, moving forward, how can you embrace this as an opportunity and really be on top of AI generated content and really play it as something, as an advantage for your agency, for example, rather than a big threat? So I think this is something we really want to talk today about. Just in between, are there any questions or something, or all good so far? Okay, sorry. Haven't seen the chat. No, I've seen the chat myself. It's good. Okay, very good. I gotta continue. um, so now the question is, if you want to stay on top of those things, it's normally time to really think about a proper review process. Um, from my perspective, typically when it comes to a review process, and like I said, we over the last decade or so, we've consulted a lot of people on content review processes. Independent from tools, there are three goals I think that you should take into consideration. The first of all is, do you want to detect AI content in your process or not? I give you an example why this might be interesting. If you as an agency work with vendors, film producers, freelancers, others that help you to deliver content to your clients. Then I guess you want to be in full control and want to be confident that the content you deliver is either just human generated or at least you know that it is AI generated, because sometimes you even need to guarantee nowadays to your client that potentially the content is safe and not AI generated. So you need to know. And that's why I think you also want to detect potentially if there is AI generated content in the game. Then there is a part that I would call ensure quality. So like I said at the end, I think nowadays is even more important now that everybody can produce content in a very, timely manner, basically very quick. You want to make sure the content is still a brand. You want to make sure it's compliant when you use AI. Really, you want to make sure the quality is not less quality, but just more. And last but not least, I think it's also about increasing the productivity. So a review process should not make you slower, it should make you faster and should increase your productivity across your agency, but then also with your clients. So my first tip, basically, when it comes to building a robust review process, is to start with how you embrace AI content and the culture you build around it. So what I recommend is to really build a culture that is proud using technology, a culture in your agency or company that is transparent. So ideally, people don't hide away and say, "Oh shit, I used ChatGPT to create this, but nobody should know." Ideally, they say, "Hell yes, I use this. I'm really at the forefront of technology, and I'm really proud about what I have been able to create here by really using the technology." So what I recommend, and this is something we are also doing internally at Filestage, is to really create a show and tell session. So on a regular end, maybe once a month or so, people can just showcase how they have used AI in their advantage to become more productive. This is a very easy trick to motivate people to be more transparent and open. Second, at the moment, it's still very much still about writing the right prompts. If you are already using AI, I guess you know this, but the prompts basically at the end right now decide the quality of what you get out of the stuff. So from my perspective, it also makes a lot of sense to create something like a prompt library within your organization or a prompt wiki, where you just share the most effective prompts to create something, to generate something. However, I also assume over time that prompts will be less important because the AI generation tools will already come up with, let's say, better ways to help you to get great content out of it. But yeah, today I think it's still important. And then last but not least, what I also recommend is to have a bit like a tagging policy where you say whenever content is AI generated, you just make it clear and tag it and say, hey, this was AI generated, so that no bad surprises can happen. Yes. Another trend I found really interesting is this correlation here. So basically, the major tech companies like Adobe or Google or Microsoft have basically teamed up, very rare, but they have, and created this correlation together where they say they want to make sure you can fully trace AI content. So when AI content was created, it's traceable, but you also can trace if this content has been manipulated over time. So that's something they are working on, and I can really recommend to have a look at their page. It's really interesting what they're working on and what they have already published. Right. Yeah, so that's the part about culture and transparency. Then now the question is, if you tried to establish this culture and really make sure people are transparent, will everybody follow? Yes, no. And what happens if people are not transparent still and still hide away with their stuff? So sometimes I guess you just have a feeling that this content, I don't know, for some reason maybe is AI generated, but people haven't told you. then there are some good ways to find out about it. Why do I think this is important? I can give you another example. At Filestage, we have a blog for marketeers and agencies, and we produce 30, 40, 50 articles a month, but we try to really produce quality content. But we also work with a pool of freelance writers from the domain. The thing is, we want to ensure we produce unique, helpful content and not, let's say, duplicated AI content that everybody else is also producing. Because at the end, if we would do so, it would potentially harm our SEO rankings or our Google reputation. So we want to avoid basically at this moment to just have purely AI generated content on our blog. And lately there was one freelancer where our editor had a very bad feeling about the writing, about the copy. So he was checking manually if this content is potentially AI generated. And if you also want to do this, there are a couple of tools we have tested. We personally like Killbot a lot. I think this is a super nice one. So you can just copy and paste your text into this, and then it will tell you, give you a likelihood how likely it is that it is AI created. Of course, it's not 100%, but it gives you a very good indication. And then you can still confront the person where you had a feeling that this content was not declared as a AI generated content. Similar to that for images, you can also use, for example, this tool here, AI or not. Very simple. Again, you paste your image into this, and then it tells you if it is AI generated or pretty likely not AI generated. Yeah, so just two little helpers to make your day-to-day review business a bit simpler. And here comes another thing. So yeah, so let's say you have your culture. You have now also, let's say, some tools to find out if people are not honest with you. How can you, at the end, really build a repeatable review process that makes you more productive and not slower? I think that's a super important part. And here we recommend a combination of things. So first of all, yeah, if you used AI already and if you follow the news, you know potentially about AI hallucination. That means like sometimes AI uses facts that are completely made up. And you cannot be sure that all the facts that it states as the truth are true. So that what I recommend is if you want to be on the safe side, is to add like a review check where you just manually check all the numbers and statistics that you use in your content. So just focus on this. And ideally, you pick somebody in your team or organization that is just responsible for that. So at the end, when you want to have a proper quality and want to have checks in between, I always recommend to go with a certain role and create a role. So for example, say, hey, you are now the numbers checker, for example. That's what the hat you are wearing. And you're responsible to make sure for every content that you check that numbers are right. So that's something I can definitely recommend to do. And of course, if you just need to do it once a month, potentially you don't need to look for any software tool yet, just run it. If you produce more content and more regular, I recommend to definitely have a look at the review and approval software such as Filestage, but of course also check out other tools in this direction. Then, I mean, I assume that the majority here is working, producing content for brands. So you all know how important the brand is. You all know how important branding is. And you all know, I guess, that brands really want to ensure that things are on brand. So typically there is a corporate brand guidelines or something you need to follow. And here's the same thing. What I recommend is to go with one role in your organization, or basically somebody per account that takes over this brand review role. Maybe that's something you have installed already, so somebody that really knows all the brand guidelines and all the rules. and then make sure for every content piece that goes out to the client to really ensure it's on brand and nothing is on there. I mean, of course, you could also just send your stuff, but I think if you want to produce a happy client over time that really has trust in the content that you deliver, and makes a lot of sense to filter out as many of the things before, so that the client has the least work as possible, right? So this is also something I recommend. And then here, this is, I think, also something I talked about at the beginning of this masterclass, is this new thing where we all produce content. We all like to produce content, right? We all like to be super creative. And it feels often like a burden that illegal is potentially breathing down your neck, and there is compliance, and it feels like, oh no, an extra layer I really need to take care of. But I think at the same time, if you do it in a smart way, and if you really build it into your review process, it's really manageable. Um, and of course, at the end, it will also help you to really be out of trouble. And I think this is something very important. So yeah, please note, I'm not a legal advisor. I have to say it here. So I also want to stay out of trouble. That's why I'm saying it. But I think there are some tricks you can really apply to make sure you, yeah, don't get sued or something, right? Yeah. Any question in between, or shall I continue? Continue. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a new thing coming up. So potentially you heard about it, potentially not. I think a majority here has already started to use AI. Maybe you have created images with an AI image creator. Maybe you in future will create videos with AI. Great, makes you a lot more productive. But now the question is, what happens if this AI tool, with the prompt you give the tool, produces content that is similar to content under copyright? So for example, if by any chance it is producing something that looks a bit like similar like Disney content, for example, then you have produced something without knowing that is an infringement to copyrights, somebody else. And at the end, it can be very, very expensive, because at the end, the AI is not working in a way that you would work, right? So, and without knowing, potentially you use this content and you use it for an advertising campaign, then it's online, and at the end somebody sees it, and then it becomes super expensive for you, for the client, for everybody. So you better want to filter this out. Um, and here are some tips. So the first of all is, be aware that this can happen using AI software. It's just a built-in issue. Second, again, I would recommend to appoint somebody in your organization to take care of those. Just build in a review step where you just say, double check for potential copyright infringements. Often just somebody thinking about it will help to be aware that this exists. And then check every content that goes out. Now, how can you be more efficient doing that? In easy ways, first of all, look at the content and see like, okay, does it resemble anything we know? Yes, no. If you have a bad feeling, take this piece of content, push it into Google Lens, and Google Lens will search all the images out there that look similar to your image. And this way you will easily come up potentially with content that is under copyright in law, um, without, let's say, knowing all of it. So it will really tell you, okay, here, please watch out, or, oh, for this content, I feel like I already found 15 content pieces from an artist that look quite similar, interesting. So let's be on the safe side and maybe better redo. You can do the same thing, of course, for grammar and copy. I think for text here, it is a lot easier than for images. Using a tool like Grammarly, and there are a lot other, or many other competitors I think you can use. But yeah, just I think being on top of this, I think is a very important thing. On top, side note, some information. Some of the leading AI content creation tools are aware of this problem. So for example, I know from Adobe Firefly that they allow you to buy an extra license that guarantees you that Adobe Firefly will not violate third-party copyrights. So basically, there is a buyout clause, so to say, if you want. But yeah, I think it also says something about the importance of this point. Right? Great. So this was my last point in terms of how you can build a robust process. I think potentially there are some questions we'll see. To summarize at the end, I feel like don't be afraid of AI because yeah, compliance and copyright and all that feels always like a threat, but rather take it as an opportunity to be at the forefront, take it as an opportunity to be super transparent about things, take it as an opportunity to really build a competitive advantage, to be on top of that. And I think if you can show your clients that you, on the one side, using this technology in their favor, but then also that you are on top of making sure the quality is right with all those instruments and a documented process, I think you will build a lot of trust in the market. So yeah, that's in a nutshell my takeaway. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Now we have a couple of minutes for Q&A. We had a couple of questions that came our way, so let me read those out loud. How do you see the brand and agency market is changing through AI? I presume this is like a question regarding profitability, productivity, what you mentioned earlier.
Mhm. So yeah, my my assumption here is that the classical agency business model will definitely change over the next couple of years. So of course, some will still have the classical business or agency model, but in a nutshell, it becomes easier to produce content. I think that's just something we have to face. And at the same time, I think it is more important to organize the way you produce content. It's more important to be on top of your creative operations process rather than being just a person producing the content. So if I put this together with what I heard about the market in terms of brands want to save money, what does it mean for your agency model? So um, I personally think it makes sense to embrace the technology and really become, let's say, the content creation leaders and the creative production leaders that completely understand the creative production process and can even advise or help clients in optimizing the process rather than just being the agency that is producing content.
Yeah, so I mean, we see it as well. A lot of talk about AI in the past year and a half has led, many agencies not only to experiment but to see how efficient they're really becoming. But as you mentioned, there's no efficiency if we're demanding to produce more and faster and bigger and better if there isn't a follow-up process which is in place, which is the review of the content itself, making sure that there isn't plagiarism happening or going out for your clients because you don't want to be stuck in that position. I also believe that the business model will have to change because with so much competition and so many people embracing it, even quietly, it's changing the shape of the market. Another question, actually kind of related. Do you have any data on how the use of AI tools is influencing agency pricing models?
To be honest, I have qualitative data, no quantitative data. So no from any report, but from my conversations, I think the last 3 months or so, I talked to around 30 CMOs and heads of marketing. Some of them said, and this really made me listen, said they are planning to use AI to replace their agencies which is a quite impressive statement. It's quite scary statement, of course, for every agency. They are planning to do so because at the end, again, budget, they want to become more productive. They want to save budget. Yeah, they just want to increase their margin as always. So now the question is if a brand, and there are some really planning this, is planning that, how can you make sure as an agency you are still part of the game then? And I think there it starts again. So I also talked to many agencies, and the ones that really embrace the technology, are really going in front, I think are also the ones that will still be part of the game. So for example, some of them said they will still produce content if necessary, of course, and campaigns and everything. But at the same time, they want to be and build holistic, automated, creative operations processes for their clients. So this means like the client comes and says, this is my my marketing world, and I have to produce every 3 months. I have to create a product campaign every 3 months for a new product in 10 different countries. How can I manage this? And then the agency will come and say, we are going to use DeepL for translations. We're going to automate this process and connect this with your DAM system, and then the review will happen in Filestage. So they will organize the entire content flow for their clients instead of just producing the content.
Yeah. Which, I mean, all of that is kind of scary as well because as we know, agencies have been in a tough position in the past 12 to 18 months, trying to move their pipelines forward, trying to secure deals, trying to retain the clients that they already have. So I think really what you're saying here is like stay ahead of the in-house marketing teams of these brands that you work for, offer them new services or offer them a new way to collaborate, assuming the current market position that we're in.
Definitely.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
If anyone else has a question, this would be the right moment. Feel free to shoot it in the Q&A or in the chat.
Yeah, I also think at the end, work is always there, right? There's always enough work, and you can always make money when you solve problems of your clients. So the question is just what kind of problems do you solve in future? And maybe those problems are not the same as in the past.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to assume that that's all for today. Niklas, thank you so much. Thanks for your time and your insights, and
Mhm.
thanks everyone for joining. If you're interested in a demo of Productive, if you don't use it already, or a demo of Filestage, will be available either via email. You can reply to me, write to us at any point.
And if you like to connect with me, I just post my LinkedIn credentials so you can just connect with me if you have any questions about review, anything, or want to discuss. I'm super happy to do so. And yeah, if you want to use Filestage, there's also a free version of Filestage you can just use. And yeah, last but not least, thanks a lot for hosting this session. And that was really a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks. Have a nice day, guys.
Take
Bye.
care.